All right. Welcome, everyone. Happy New Year. Good to see all of your faces. So welcome to the 32nd meeting of the Casclave Food Commission. I am looking for item number 1A, an approval of the order and contents of the overall agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve.
All right, I think that was Commissioner George. And two, since there's so many new people, make sure and say your name at the end just for the purpose of minutes.
I would second.
Wait, I'll second.
Adam, you got a second?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Item number 1B would be review and action on the minutes from November 4th, 2020. I think those minutes went out in the packet, correct? Are there any changes or what is the board's wishes?
I'll make a motion to approve. George?
All right, we have a motion to approve by Mandy George. I guess I'll second the motion. So any other discussion on the minutes? All those in favor of the minutes signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you. Item number 1C would be a welcome to our new Food Commission members. Commissioner Duane Breitling from Cass County and Councilwoman Deb White from City of Moorhead, correct? Are you guys having trouble hearing me?
No, can
Okay.
you hear me?
Jenny.
Can hear you okay?
Yeah. Okay. Great. Well, both the new commissioners, would you like to introduce yourselves, please?
I'd be happy to introduce myself. I'm Deb White. I'm a council member for Ward 3 in Moorhead, and I know I have some big shoes to fill because I'm following my our former council member Sarah Watson Curry. But it's a real pleasure to be here. I really value the work that you do and hope that I can be a strong advocate and liaison for the City of Moorhead.
Thank you, Deb. Welcome. Duane?
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, I don't think I'm on the camera. I'm having some problems that way, but my name is Duane Breitling. I'm the county commissioner from District 4 in Cass County. Excuse me. I have some background with MetroCog, having served for the last 2 years on the executive committee of that group as well. Look forward to finding out what I need to do and what we can do in this endeavor. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you, Duane. So there are a lot of new faces on this call, which is incredibly exciting. And I think if we can make it happen, I'd like to just have us go around maybe the table, if you will, and introduce yourself. And I know everyone's faces keep shuffling, so I might call off as I see them, if that works. So the first box is Adam Alderberg.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Adam Alderberg, and I'm with the Fargo Moorhead Metropolitan Council of Governments and also on the steering committee for the Food Commission.
Jeffrey Miller. Oh, he was there. Commissioner George.
Hi, yep, I'm Commissioner Mandy George, City of West Fargo, and I've been serving on the Cass County Food Partners, Casclave Food Partners now for about 6 months, and this is really cool for me to have Councilwoman Deborah White on the board. She was a professor of mine, a sociology professor of mine at Moorhead State, maybe 20 years ago, so this is pretty cool. So it's a privilege to be serving with her.
Welcome. Rita?
I'm Rita Usadis. I'm the FCW agent for Cass County Extension. I'm returning to the board since Kayla Carlson resigned her position, but I was one of the original members of this, like in, I don't know, 12 years ago. And I've just been off for the 1 year, so I'm glad to be back.
Good to see you again, Rita. Taylor Stevertson?
Hi, everybody. My name is Taylor Stevertson. I serve as an impact manager with the Great Plains Food Bank. I also chair the Casclave Hunger Coalition, and I'm a guest today, so thank you for having me.
Welcome. Jeremiah?
I'm Commissioner Jeremiah Utek. I represent entrepreneurial interests on the board, and this is the start of my second term.
Jeff York?
Hi, Jeff York, hopefully soon to be an at-large member of the commission here. I work and live downtown. I've been with RDO Equipment in their IT analytics team for about 16 plus years. Studied political science back in college and always had a fascination. I actually worked in the city manager's office as an intern for a while. Some of you may know Dan Molly. He and I worked there together, and I've been friends with him for many years. So any stories will, of course, have to be offline about that. Just happy to be here. Nice to meet everybody. And like Duane said, hopefully I can help in any way. I'll sit back and listen.
Great. Welcome, Jeff. Kim Lipetsky?
Okay. Hi, I'm Kim Lipetsky from Fargo Cass Public Health. I am a co-chair of the Casclave Food Partners Steering Committee, and like Rita, have been with the Food Partners since the beginning. Welcome, everybody.
Noelle Harden?
Good morning. I'm Noelle Harden. I work with the University of Minnesota Extension based in Moorhead. And along with Kim, I'm the co-chair of the Casclave Food Partners Steering Committee.
Thank you. Mary Larson?
I tried to use my space bar and that did not work. Good morning, everyone. I'm Mary Larson. I am a faculty member in the Department of Public Health at North Dakota State University. I live in Moorhead in Ward 3, so I'm excited to see Deb here as well. I'm a new member of the steering committee this year and excited to be a part of this work. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. Janice Tweet?
Hello, I'm Janice Tweet with the Great Plains Food Bank, and I am one of the at-large members of the commission, having served for about a year now.
Thank you. Jenna Cayley?
Hi, Jenna Cayley. I'm a new Clay County Commissioner, and I will be serving as an alternate to Jenny on this.
Welcome, Jenna. Rory Beal?
Hi, Rory Beal. I am the Health Promotion Director for Clay County Public Health, and I am on the Casclave Food Partners Steering Committee.
And like Mandy George, I am ecstatic that I get to work with Rory because Rory was my speed strength coach in high school. And yeah, so he continues to motivate me even now. Hannah Letzer.
Hello, I am a dietetic intern with Concordia College in Moorhead, and I'm here at NDSU Extension working with Rita for the next few weeks. So I'm just observing. Thank you for having me.
Welcome. Beth McConnon.
Good morning. My name is Beth McConnon. I'm an organic farmer south of Moorhead, Minnesota, and I serve as an at-large member on the Food Commission.
Deb.
My name is Deb Haugen, and like Kim and Rita, I've been with the initiative when we started the Food Partners Steering Committee since the beginning. And I love all the different work that the Commission has been able to do so far.
And I see Jeffrey Miller.
I'm Jeffrey Miller. I'm the director of the Cass County Soil Conservation District, and I've been involved with the Food Partners for a little over a year now.
And then Madeline Qualley.
Hi, I'm a dietetic intern at Cass County Public Health, so I'm also just observing today.
Welcome. Well, it is exciting to see all of these faces. We have really grown as a network, so let's get to work. The commission check-in, item number 2. To those that are new, the commission check-in is typically just a roundtable where we go around and you can have the opportunity to give a highlight of any relevant topic that you feel fit. The Food Partners Network goes in a variety of different ways. So just, it's a time to give an update or let us know of something pertinent if you want. It's not, you don't have to, but you're welcome to. So anyone? Well, I'll start. Clay County is excited to be partnering with MetroCog for our county comprehensive plan, and we have been deliberate in making sure that the food access needs and the work of this board is represented in that document. And so it's great to have MetroCog as part of that discussion as they are with this. So that's one thing that we'll get started here in January. And we are continuing, as we all are, partnering with our public health to get as many people in the community vaccinated as possible. I know that a lot of resources are going towards that, and so the more we can share information across the border, the better for all of us. So thank you. Anyone else? Okay, then if there are no other check-ins, I will go to number 3 on the agenda, the approval of the appointments of our at-large members. We need 1 new appointment and 1 reappointment to consider, and apparently I lost my video, so I don't, oh, there we go. Jeremiah, Commissioner Jeremiah has agreed to serve for another 2 years, and the application of Jeff York is also attached in the documents for the new applicant. Adam, do you have anything else to say on this?
Not much else to add. The information is included in attachment 2, and for those that are new, every year we look at and invite members from the public to apply to serve as an at-large member. Each term is for 2 years, and we usually rotate, either looking for 2 or 3 new members depending on the year. So, and as Chair Mojo said, Jeremiah has stated that he would like to serve for another term, and then we have a new applicant, Jeff York, and his application is in your packet.
Adam, can you state again how long the terms are?
Terms for at-large members are 2 years.
Okay. Any questions from the commission? Jeremiah or Jeff, do you have anything else that you'd like to add?
No, I'm just honored to be able to do this again.
Well, we certainly appreciate your eagerness, both of you, to be part of this discussion. And Jeremiah, your point of view has been very valued throughout the conversations that we've had in your time on this board. So I certainly would hope this board would appoint you for another term.
Are you looking for a motion?
Yes, Commissioner Breitling.
I so move.
For both of them or for one?
Both.
Wonderful. Yep.
I will second. Deb White.
All right, and we have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Wonderful. Welcome to you both. Item number 4 would be our jurisdictional spotlight from the City of Fargo. I have a note here that Commissioner Preston was not able to attend. So Kim, are you giving that update?
Yes, I am. Yeah, Arlette had something come up unexpectedly this morning and was unable to attend the meeting. So I'm going to give her a spotlight report for the city of Fargo. The first thing that she was going to report on is related to COVID relief for businesses in the city through the Business Assistance Program. And back in November on the 30th, the City Commission, at that City Commission meeting, city staff was asked to develop a comprehensive short-term program to provide targeted relief to the city's restaurants and bars. And the proposed Business Assistance Program will provide immediate cost relief without creating an administrative burden to these businesses. And it would also complement the federal and state economic recovery programs available to these industries. Plus it serves as an expression of the city's support for licensed establishments. So what it is, the licensed restaurants and bar operations in the city will receive 2 forms of economic relief from the city. The first is the suspension of utility charges from January 1st through June 30th. And the second is a rebate of the food and alcohol license fees. So licensed establishments don't have to apply for the suspension of utility charges. During the 6 months, the accounts just simply will not be collected. And also for 2021, approximately 440 restaurants and bars will receive the rebate for the applicable license fees paid to the city, and no application is necessary to receive the rebate. So the city is trying to provide some support to restaurants and bars in the city. The second item to report is on the Boulevard Garden program for Fargo. Noelle and I attended the December 14th Fargo City Commission meeting, and we provided a report on the temporary Boulevard Garden program that was implemented last summer. And for those of you who are new, last spring we went to the Fargo City Commission and asked if we could allow boulevard gardening during the growing season of last year. It's something that was not allowed in Fargo before. So they allowed a temporary policy, and it had a sunset clause this fall. It was up the end of September. And part of that was that we needed to return to the City Commission in December with a report on how it went. So that's what Noelle and I did in December. And then we had an ask that we could make this permanent. And so the City Commission voted unanimously to make the Boulevard Garden a permanent thing in Fargo. And they also granted our request to take a look at some of the stipulations to kind of rework a few of those based on some of the lessons that we learned last summer. What were some of the barriers to people doing this and so on. There was also a couple of commissioners that asked that we simplify the stipulations a little bit, which was really nice. So the next step with that is we're going to be setting up a public input meeting with interested residents and some of those that participated last year in the Boulevard Garden program to kind of take a look at what is in the policy and what the stipulations are, and then work with impacted city departments like planning, public works, engineering, and forestry to make sure that they're okay with the changes, and then work with the city attorney to draft an ordinance and then bring it back to the commission for final approval. So we're excited about this and feel it's kind of another way that the city of Fargo is showing support for things like gardening and creating a more resilient community. The last bit of information I wanted to mention is that Fargo is in the process of forming a sustainability and resiliency committee. And a little bit of history on this. Back in 2005, the City Commission had created a committee called the Renewable Energy and Conservation Committee. And that purpose was to provide recommendations on increasing energy conservation and use of renewable energy in city operations and facilities. And then about a year ago, it was suggested that this committee be reactivated because it kind of fell by the wayside, but it was suggested it be reactivated with new appointees to the committee. And so at the November 13th, 2020 City Commission meeting, it was recommended that this former committee be renamed to the Sustainability and Resiliency Committee with a role to make recommendations to the City Commission for actions or policy adoptions that are related to climate resiliency, renewable energy emissions reduction, energy efficiency, and environmental stewardship. And I mentioned this committee because I think it's a great way to kind of include resilient food systems that fits right in there, our gardening work, our pollinator gardens, and those types of things. So currently, this committee is looking for 3 at-large appointments to be part of the committee. So I think it is an opportunity for some of our food systems work to become a part of this. So that's our report for Fargo.
Lots of really good points. Does anyone have any comments on that?
I have a question. How many participants were there in this Boulevard program in 2020?
We had 11 people inquire about it, and we had a permitting system that was set up, and people needed to have insurance and that type of thing. We had 3 that actually worked through the whole process and did boulevard gardens. We had 6 that said, well, that got either partway through the permitting application and we're having trouble with insurance, or felt it was too late in the system because we didn't, or in the season, because this got started about the middle of May, that they felt they didn't want to do it. And the other one was because it was temporary, people didn't want to put money into putting plants on the boulevard. So we had 3 actually carry through with it. We had 2 we had to decline because they didn't meet the stipulations of the ordinance. So because of some of these barriers, that's why we asked to take a look at a few of these things and make it easier for people to do these things. We also have extension, and we have the soil conservation group who can really help provide some great education and help people work through how to go about doing boulevard gardens. We also have Noel Garden from Minnesota on the Minnesota side, because they also allow boulevard gardens over there, and we kind of adopted their policy. Noel did it as well this year. So she's an excellent resource too for what works, what doesn't work, those types of things.
This is Deb. I was wondering, just listening to this reminds me of conversations I've had with a few of you at different times that usually revolve around, how are our policies in Moorhead different from Fargo? And I know that at times the group has created documents that have gone out to the community to let people know what they can do in their community, be it regarding chickens or gardening and things like that. Do we have do we use an active, like some kind of an active document, a database that people could go to that we could update regularly so we could see things like this to see where there's changes or look at some of the differences between the community? Because I would think I, as a council member, would love to have something like that so that we could point to, here's what they're doing in Fargo regarding urban chickens, look at their policy, we could adopt something like that. Or again, where folks in Fargo can easily look at ours, but also for the community. So I think for elected officials and for our community, do we have something like that that they can go to that is an active document that we're regularly updating?
That's a really good question. Sorry. I was just going to say, yes, there are documents available. This group has worked through some blueprints, and I see that Noelle has shared them in the chat. And what we've done is systematically gone through the different blueprints to address how ordinances and regulations are different between the jurisdictions, but also how different communities are doing it nationwide. And so if you wanted to, as a council member from Moorhead, take that back to your board, you have a better document just to kind of reference. I think that the continuing to go back and forth to it and add as we as a community maybe address some of these, or like what happened in Fargo, add to it, I think would be really helpful. And I think that's probably the best, we're best together because of the strength of what that is and the conversations that we can have. But you're right, things are different for a city versus a county. And so those blueprints kind of address them. So Noelle, did you want to add anything to that?
Yes, thank you. That's such an important point. We have put together a lot of information and now have been trying to share it more widely, which is always a challenge. In addition to the City of Fargo website, which I shared, we did a lot of work this summer to try and update the information because a few things change. Sometimes ordinances change, sometimes interpretations of policies change. So we worked with we serve 7 different jurisdictions. So we worked with each planning department to kind of update the information. And we work with Food of the North. They are a partner network of ours, and they have a wonderful new website where they've been taking the somewhat dry information that we've collected and putting it on their website in a really user-friendly format. So I will post the link for that website as well. But that's always something that is a challenge, to try and keep that updated and keep sharing the information. And we always welcome ideas on that.
Jenny?
Yes.
Okay, this is Mary Larson. Am I able to say anything?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, just in response to, I think, what Deb was asking about, the blueprints are, it looks like, and I've seen a couple of these before, just excellent information that's been put together. It doesn't indicate whether any or all of these were adopted by the City of Fargo. Is that information available somewhere? What's been adopted and what the specifics look like for each jurisdiction?
Yeah, I can address that. There are parts in some of those blueprints that lay out each jurisdiction that's represented through the commission, and it says whether or not it is permitted. But the other thing that we pulled together, as Noelle was kind of alluding to, is we have a document that's called Frequently Asked Questions on whether or not you can do some of these things in your city or county, and that was meant to help people because you might be able to do chickens in one but not the other. So that document too is it pulls up the different types of things that you can do. Can you boulevard garden? Can you have chickens? Can you keep bees? That type of thing. And then lists out each jurisdiction and whether or not you can do those things. So yeah, it's there. But,
sorry, Kim.
No, that's okay.
I think the most important thing to note is that we understand that there are political concerns regarding all of this. And so we as food partners wanted to do the research and have the document ready because we've been having a lot of individuals have reached out to us and asked about this. So we did the research and the legwork, and it's now up to if an entity in itself wants to take it up. We're not taking a position on any of it, but we wanted to have all the background information pulled together so that if a new council person from somewhere else comes in and thinks that this is something that they're hearing from their neighborhoods that they really want, there's information for them to launch. Anything else? Feel free. I know that for those of us that have been on this board for 6 years, sometimes we tend to just steamroll the conversation. And so I get it's overwhelming if this is, we need to kind of go back back and cover some spots, I would be happy to do that. So I apologize if we're moving fairly fast, but I think Noelle, we can make sure and send links to where those, I know you did in the chat here, but let's forward that to emails so folks have that available if they want. All right, trying to get us back up to speed then. Our next item would be our number 5 item is our hunger update. And Taylor is here from the Great Plains Food Bank, and we're excited that you're here. You're excited to present. We are always in the business of making sure we address the food needs of the community, and we really have amped that up in the pandemic. And so welcome, Taylor.
Thank you, Jenny. I am going to try to share my screen with a presentation that I have. It's going to take me just a second, so I'm going to put myself on a quick mute here while I get that squared away. Okay, can I get a thumbs up just that you can see my state of hunger? Great, awesome. Now, I'm working on a couple screens, so I'm gonna, don't look at my face, look at this screen. This is the more detailed, interesting information, but I'm gonna be referencing some notes here because I wanna make sure that there's a lot of information that I wanna share today, and I wanna make sure I'm representing that as accurately as possible. I'm also gonna keep an eye on time. But Noelle, if I tend to get, you know, if I'm very off track, will you just give me a little wave or a little chat message and let me know to speed things along? I tend to be somewhat long-winded, so I'll I'll try to keep that in check here. But thank you all for having me today, for the introduction, and for the time and space to make this this a priority. My name is Taylor Stevertson. I serve as the Impact Manager with the Great Plains Food Bank. And I work on our team that is dedicated to addressing the root causes of hunger. We work to find uniquely tailored solutions for the dynamic needs of every community that we serve. And we take that on a very community by community basis. I think it goes without saying that COVID has irreversibly changed the way organizations like ours respond to, manage, and recover from crises like the one we're facing today and right now. I'm going to share, for those of you who may not be familiar with food banking in our community, I'm going to share a really brief overview of our work, and then I'm going to describe some of the changes we've seen in the level of need resulting from the social, health, and economic uncertainties of the last year. So first, a little level setting. The origin of food banks is around gaps. And we've been around for 38 years, which is an incredibly long history. And during that time, we've been committed to recovering food that would otherwise go to waste and getting that food to people who need it most. So about 27% of the food produced in the US never reaches the dinner table. And honestly, whenever I hear that statistic, it is just staggering to me that there's that much food that goes to waste. That doesn't even include plate waste, the things you serve yourself that you throw away. That's good quality food, produce, meat and dairy, and a variety of food that never gets made into a meal. And yet about 40 million Americans in our nation are going hungry. Here in Cass and Clay counties, we know that over 30,000 people won't have enough food on their dinner table tonight. That's the gap that the food bank aims to fill, and we work very closely with community partners and through our direct service programs to make that happen. So hunger seems like a pretty simple problem to solve. We have all of these hungry people. We have all of this food going to waste. And if we can capture that food and get it to people, we should be able to eliminate hunger. Not quite. If you've heard from anyone at the food bank over the past couple of years, you know that that's what we used to think. That's what food banks have been doing for decades.
But at some point, we knew that we really needed to reflect and take a deeper look in our work and ask ourselves if we were truly ending hunger. If we're fulfilling our mission, we should have fewer and fewer people every year that need food assistance. But we now know that food alone can't solve hunger, and that there are these deep systemic issues and disparities that keep people from food security. So our previous model was fairly reactive. We know that we need to be proactive. And so we have to continue providing meals and food to people. That's a basic human need. It's a basic service that we're going to continue to satisfy, a goal we're never going to step away from. But at the same time, we need to figure out how to decrease the need. And in food bank lingo, we talk about that as shortening the line, really illustrating, shortening that line of folks that might be standing in line to get food. We know that this work is upstream and that we're going to have to work hard to ensure that people don't need our services in the first place. And a lot of us here at the food bank talk about this in the sense of working ourselves out of a job. Every day we should be working closer and closer to not needing to have our doors open. So we've come to a point where we've had to ask ourselves some other hard questions. How do we do this right now, in this moment? We're going to come back to that question in just a second or a couple minutes. But first, I'd like to walk through a couple of things. Certainly a little rudimentary, but it shows some of the factors that play into a person's food insecurity. First, you have the individual at the center of this fancy little graphic. These are all the characteristics, demographics that play into who a person is, like their race, their gender, their family status, education, employment, their ability, and so forth. The layer beyond that are the social or community factors. Think of things like where someone grew up, if they live in a rural community, where they live now, and their access to resources and services. Beyond that is the sort of environmental factors. Does a person have safe, accessible drinking water or clean air? And then the outer ring here is policy factors. And because we know we can do all the work of improving all of these inner circles and working hard to change those dynamics, but if we really want to have long-term change, we really have to focus on this outer circle of policy factors. If this outer circle doesn't change, it becomes really difficult for real change to happen at all of those inner levels of a community or an individual for generations to come. So real change only happens when change is implemented at every level. And so many of these are not distinct, clean circles or levels of a person's life with barriers. They're interconnected and they're related. And this is really an illustration of systemic change. Those are the things that we're working hard to do, things that we're working to impact sustainably so we don't have to redo these things over and over for every generation or every change in leadership. This is hard work. We are not claiming to be experts at it. We know it takes time and collaboration. It's messy. It's often very, very unclear, but this is a big part of our work right now. So here's another rudimentary depiction of what this might look like. If we want to improve a person's food security or reduce their hunger, we can't really do it until we look at all of the things that are going on in a person's life. We need to look at our clients very, very holistically. When they struggle with hunger, they might also be struggling with things like housing or unemployment or poverty or health or education or discrimination or technology challenges or their geography, and this can go on and on and on. These complexities of life are so interdependent in how they determine a person's outcomes. But right now, we know that all of these challenges are, they are compounded in even more complex ways as a result of a global pandemic. And we can't untangle that from the reality of hunger that so many others are facing. So again, I'm going to pick up that question from a couple minutes ago. How do we work hard to end hunger in all of these complex ways in this moment? So I'm going to bring us back a couple of months and share really how we move from immediate crisis response to management and a hopeful recovery. If any of my friends on the call are emergency management professionals, they'll rightly raise their hands and say, hey, wait, we are still in the midst of a very real and very serious disaster. But we're hopeful that the policies and the practices and the distribution methods and things that we've activated are really moving us all in the right direction together. Right away, back in March, we activated our COVID response team, and they developed a disaster response plan and health and safety protocol that ensured that our staff, our partners, and our clients would be safe in every interaction. This meant that we'd be able to continue providing our basic services without disruption. I think it would have been pretty big news if the Great Plains Food Bank had to have closed their doors on any given day this spring. And we were so proud through our ability to pivot and find new ways to serve clients that we have not closed our doors a single day since March. If you know us at the food bank, and Janice, and I know others here on the call know this very, very true. You know that we are committed to our value of innovation. It's hard for us to set aside the new and exciting projects we have on the horizon. And at the beginning of 2020, we had so many fun, exciting new projects and partnerships, but we knew that we really had to set those aside and get back to basics. We knew that we could come back to those exciting projects and innovative ideas when the time was right, but that we really needed to focus on our core critical services. The need for food assistance is at an all-time high in our 39-year history. We know that this elevated need is a result of uncertain times, job loss, and economic downturn. And while we aren't sure what the future looks like, we take one day at a time, we know that there are a lot of families that are struggling. Statewide, we've seen about a 45% increase in client need, with much of that rise happening right away in these early months. So moving forward, we continue to make changes to really reflect those immediate critical needs of our neighbors. Our traditional food streams all but disappeared. We typically move about 1 million pounds of food a month from our warehouse. And I know it's really difficult to conceptualize what 1 million pounds is. I can't even quite visualize what that means. But if you remember when you went to the grocery store this last spring, you noticed those empty shelves, and it meant that you maybe had to make other food choices or go without things that you were used to having in your house. Those empty shelves meant that there wasn't surplus food in the network for us to capture. So we had to shift to purchasing 100% of the food that we would have typically gotten donated. And right now, or in a traditional year, we get about 90% of our food donated. So we had to shift to purchasing truckloads upon truckloads of food, and we were able to pass that food on to our community partners and community food pantries free of charge. The USDA also stepped in big ways to support Food Assistance Network with the Farmers to Families Food Box program. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with this. We like to shorten it, make it a little easier to say by calling it F2F. At times, we had upwards of 9 trucks a week, big semi-trucks, getting food to communities all across the state. Here in Cass and Clay counties, we distributed almost 17,000 boxes of food, equating to over 300,000 pounds of nutritious dairy, produce, meat, and other things that were needed. We were able to do all of this work, all of that purchasing, all of this distribution model,
as a result of the really incredible generosity of so many people near and far, and of course, as a result of federal funding that prioritized families in need. Our 61 local partners, those are food pantries, soup kitchens, shelters, and others that serve people here in our community, they shifted their operations and pivoted in ways that allowed them to also keep their doors open. So many of our partners are volunteer run. They are working on limited budgets, and to have seen their ability to shift and adapt in this moment has just amazed us at their resilience. We also know that advocacy worked. We have really wonderful relationships with our elected leaders at every level. Melissa, my boss, our president here at the food bank, who I know most of you know, she had weekly meetings with Senator Hoeven's staff. She provided them in the moment updates and changes, and as a result of that open communication and information building, advocates all over the nation have successfully been able to increase SNAP benefits for people in our area by about 15%. So that's money that they're able to actually spend on food that keeps them out of a food pantry potentially, or allows them to rebalance their household budget in new ways. So that brings me here. Statewide, I mentioned we've seen that increase of about 45% in our clientele. That's a massive increase. And while we're working through some of our final annual numbers in Casclave, we know that we served about 250,000 more meals in 2020 than we did in 2019. That's a lot. That tells us that we're not only seeing new faces, but that the need for those who've had an ongoing or chronic need is deeper. And we know that this isn't going to end anytime soon, that the need is going to be really prolonged. So we're working hard to put together some projections around long-term impact so we can continue to respond appropriately and on into the future. We also know that unfortunately, people still feel shame and guilt and stigma when they access the services they need. So this is another area that we need to continue to work hard in lowering those senses of shame and finding ways to reach people where they're at and continue to share the message that everybody needs a helping hand sometimes. And this past year has really shed light on just how essential our network is to the growing number of people who need that helping hand. From volunteers to community partners to staff, and of course, all of our elected leaders and officials who have helped us put some of these programs and changes into place. So we're so excited that together with our partners, we've been resilient in ways that have even surprised us, but we know our work isn't done. We're hopeful for that day where we can shut our doors and all go find different jobs, but for now, we know that there's a lot left to do. So with that, I think I was able to stay within my allotted time here, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
Very impressive, Taylor. Good work. Anyone have questions on that? We covered a lot of ground, but feel free to ask anything.
This is Commissioner George. I have just a quick question. First of all, I agree. I thought that was a fantastic presentation. I was just wondering if you've had a sufficient number of volunteers, or do you have a need for volunteers, or where you're at with that?
That's a very good question. Thank you for the question, Commissioner George. We are constantly in need of volunteers. A great deal of our volunteers are folks who are vulnerable in terms of health, and we have kind of an ongoing need for volunteers. We did see folks tend to stay home when they felt that situations and spaces they maybe weren't familiar with or comfortable with was outside of their comfort zone. So we do have a very serious protocol for sanitation and hygiene practices and some new volunteer protocol. We have limited group sizes,
And we do require masks in our space, of course, for everyone. But we are accepting volunteers, and we would be very, very grateful for anyone who's willing and able to share their time with us. The best way to volunteer with the Great Plains Food Bank is to check out our website, greatplainsfoodbank.org, and then click on the volunteer tab, and then you can actually sign up for a volunteer slot right on our website.
There's a question in the chat, by the way.
Oh. I can't see it with the current view. Jenny, would you mind reading that for me?
The question is from Jenna Cayley. What is the coverage area of the Great Plains Food Bank, and were there increases in SNAP benefits you mentioned seen in North Dakota and Minnesota? Was that nationwide?
Great question. So our service area at the Great Plains Food Bank includes every county in North Dakota, so 53 counties, and 1 county in Minnesota, Clay County. So we have a service area of 54 counties across state lines. And that's really because, as you all know, the really important relationship between Cass and Clay counties. Lots of folks travel between communities. In terms of SNAP benefits, I am incredibly tuned in to North Dakota and Minnesota, but it is my perception that the SNAP benefit increase was nationwide, but that states did need to sort of submit some paperwork for that process to continue on for those additional benefits to be activated.
Taylor, we have had discussions about these smaller food banks that you deliver to all over North Dakota and rurally in Clay County, and there's been some talk about the difficulties that COVID has presented with them. How as people in our position, how can we help the mission in Cass and Clay County?
Oh, that's a great question. I mentioned earlier that there are 61 partners of ours in Cass and Clay County. So we have over 200 partners statewide, those smaller food pantries, soup kitchens, and shelters that serve folks. But here in our community, there are a great deal of organizations that would certainly benefit from support, whether that's the ability to donate leftover produce during our gardening season, the ability to share funds with those smaller organizations. They certainly do a lot of purchasing of food. And then, of course, the ability to volunteer your time with any one of our partner agencies would be greatly, greatly appreciated. So those are typically the best ways to help those partners of ours and the things that tend to have the most impact.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I have a question. First of all, thank you so much, Taylor. That was a really wonderful presentation, and we're so lucky to have the Great Plains Food Bank right in Fargo and that connection with you all. At the very beginning, you talked about addressing gaps in food waste and food insecurity in particular, but that got me thinking about COVID and the effects that it's had on the restaurant industry. And we heard about that earlier with the update from Fargo. And this may be more at the partner level than the food bank level, but have you heard or have you pursued any strategies kind of bridging the restaurant industry and, you know, people being out of work, the labor, the kitchens, even early on in the pandemic, the food that was going to waste, and trying to bridge that with hunger relief, you know, the growing unhoused population, I know is another huge issue in the Fargo-Moorhead area. So anything that you can say on that would be appreciated.
Yeah, thank you, Noelle. I actually last week was part of a discussion or not last week, very recently, I think it might have been last month actually, was part of a discussion that the USDA was hosting. And they had actually brought someone to the table who was talking about how they've leveraged restaurant staff and restaurant food that had been going to waste, exactly what you're talking about. in ways to connect that food directly to people who need it, and to use that those staff as volunteers, or find some way to pay them some kind of payment model. I absolutely love this idea. I think it's an incredibly smart way to activate resources that are already available. We aren't currently doing this, but one of the things that we have been engaged with is a program that is going to be piloting here this spring that I know some of you know about, called the School Repack Pilot, and is essentially taking that model of people and food in the restaurant industry and activating that in schools. So the leftover food that is served in a public school setting, that food in some cases is going to waste. And so we're working together with partners to find ways to repack that food that would otherwise go to waste in schools, deep freeze it, and then distribute that food through the school pantries that are on site. Now, it is very possible I'm speaking out of turn on this because it's an exciting project that's certainly not mine, but I'm very excited to brag about, and is still in the works, and is very much a pilot that is going to work through some kinks and work closely with some of our local school districts to keep that food where it's intended to be served. Really making sure that kids who are in need of food assistance, who are accessing a food pantry, school pantry right on site, are getting more of that very nutritious food that they're getting at lunch.
There is another question for you from Jenna. She's apologizing for typing her questions, but she has some unstable internet, which we all can understand. Taylor, you mentioned the outer ring of policy change is critical for addressing hunger in the long term. Are there specific policy changes that your organization has identified that we can help advocate for?
Thank you for that question. Right now, our focus has been this SNAP policy change. For every one meal that a food bank can provide, which can certainly go a long way, SNAP can provide up to 9 meals. So we know that SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, formerly known as food stamps, is really one of the most beneficial tools to lift people out of food insecurity and give them a long-term sustainability for their whole household. So SNAP is certainly a focus of ours. Noelle, I'd love to hear your cheerleading on SNAP also, and others who I know support the work of SNAP and other economic support programs. Those tools are really what we're focusing on right now, and we'll continue to focus on that maximum benefit and increases that we can affect for that. We know that in 7 days, we may see some changes in priorities with a shift in administration. And so right now we're in a little bit of a wait and see moment, but that is typically our priority in this space at the food bank.
Great. Would you mind adding your contact information in the chat, just so if we have any follow-up questions, we can connect with you? Important stuff.
Yeah. Thank you again for having me. I've appreciated the time and the questions, and I'd be happy to answer any offline too.
Great, thank you. Our next item then moving forward would be our Casclave Food Partners Strategic Planning Exercise Recap. Noelle.
Doesn't quite sound as exciting as an update from Great Plains and all their great work. But I am happy to share an update and where we have landed as our focus of our Casclave Food Partners work in the next year. So can you all see my screen? Awesome. So this came out with the packet. This is just a kind of one-page summary of where we have landed as a steering committee and food commission, where we'd like to put our focus in the next year, and how we got to that decision. So I will quickly go through this one pager, and I have a couple questions I would like to invite some discussion on and for you all to think about as we embark on some new and continued work together. And I am not going to look at the chat while I'm screen sharing because that's always confusing. So if there's anything urgent, just Jenny or someone else, you can stop me. All right, so you may remember at our last meeting on November 4th, we engaged in an activity in small group discussions through breakouts on Zoom. First, I had shared a 2-page kind of overview of our work as a food commission over the last 5 years, and some work around what we did during COVID, where we really stepped up our work as a network. So I'll make sure Adam and I will put together a follow-up message that includes that information as well. But we used that document, which summarized our blueprints and other work, to invite the question of, what should we focus on over the next 2 years to keep building on this body of work, and what would success look like? So attendees, we had about 15 attendees at that last meeting, split into groups, brainstormed ideas, and then we came back together and generated a list of potential focus areas. So at the top of the list, and then we voted. We each had 1 vote to kind of decide what was the most important. So of the 15 votes, 6 of us indicated that integrating food systems into comprehensive planning and other local and regional planning efforts was a very important focus. And that's the large, in my unlabeled pie chart, that's the big maroon chunk if you need a visual. And then the yellow section, 4 votes, was to continue our COVID response efforts. And that work included information sharing, including some of the information that was shared today, communication. We were sharing regular updates through Facebook Live throughout the summer, and then also policy change work. In addition to the Boulevard Garden policy, we were looking at other changes as well. So then there also was interest in forming a stronger connection with the Casclave Hunger Coalition. Part of the impetus to invite Taylor today and to pursue representation from the hunger emergency food relief community in our steering committee. Additionally, folks identified continuing our policy efforts with gardens and bees, implementing the policy blueprints that we've worked so hard on, promoting urban farming and gardening on flood buyout land, and supporting school gardens. Each of those, while they only received 1 vote, those are important topics that we'll continue to talk about at the steering committee and certainly support our members and elected representatives in any work around those. All right, so we took that information and met last month as the steering committee, welcomed Mary Larson again as a new steering committee member. We discussed kind of our current workload and roles that we've taken on, key partnerships and special projects, and really focused in on our priorities and what we want to dig into for the next year or probably 2 years, because we tend to sort of operate on a 2-year cycle. And where we landed was in agreement with the Food Commission discussion that our top priority for this next year is to integrate food systems into local and regional planning efforts and other efforts that are happening, such as the Moorhead Resilience Task Force and the new entity or the newly emerging entity in Fargo looking at sustainability and resilience. So that's what we're hoping to do, is to integrate our work better into planning efforts. That was one of the many takeaways we had about our food system during COVID, is that we didn't really have plans in place through emergency response or through comprehensive planning and helping jurisdictions have food systems be a priority, so that we weren't able to move on some things that we may have been able to. And I think I'll just say I participated in a community of practice with representatives from Austin, Denver, other larger cities, and this was across the board of finding for cities and food policy councils across the US, is that there just was a lack of preparedness and planning focused around what might happen with the food system. And then as we integrate into these efforts, we intend to continue to center equity and justice, really digging into issues around hunger, environmental resilience, and then to really focus on implementing our existing research that we've done, the many 20+ documents that we've created now, and thinking about how we can work with existing programs like the Boulevard Gardening program to make it more accessible and widely adopted. So in the little bit of time that we have, I'd love to hear any reactions that you may have. And specifically, we're interested in what types of local, regional planning efforts or other projects that we should plug into as a network. We'd love to hear about that. And if you have any thoughts on how you or other members of this group could be directly involved, we would love to hear that as well. Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks, Noelle. I was really excited when I read this, and in particular that the top priority was integrating food into the comprehensive plan, into comprehensive planning. We in Moorhead are just beginning our work to update our comprehensive plan, and I know I heard that, you know, that Clay County and City of Fargo are making sure that it's integrated, that this is integrated into their efforts. On Monday, we just appointed a committee that's our study review committee for our comprehensive plan. And so I was trying to match up names to see if there's anybody from this group that is on that. And I didn't notice that there was. So I wanted to ask, is there a member of this group that's on that committee? And if not, I don't know if it's too late to, I already requested one revision to it at Monday night's meeting, but I could go back to them and see. But it seems like an obvious need to have somebody there that can speak to this on that committee as we move forward. So I take it there is nobody who is aware that they've been appointed to that committee, right?
I don't think so. I think Noelle would know if she got appointed.
No, and I know Noelle is not, and that's why I wasn't sure if there was anybody else. So I will look into that. We also, there's a spot that is for a college student. I don't know if you have a college student that would be applicable, but I'd love to see what I can do. If I could make that happen, I think that'd be great.
Yeah, we might need to ponder on that and get back to you, Deb. I think that's a really good point. Search the network.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing that forward. That's exactly the kind of opportunity that we're looking for. I know we all wear a lot of hats and are on a lot of committees. So as long as we can stay aware of, I'm sure there'll be a resident input process and additional ways. Certainly having that connection on the committee is great, but even just being able to alert our network when there's opportunities to bring issues forward and influence that process is also really important. And I'm sure if the committee's still taking volunteers, we could find one of our members. I would certainly be willing to volunteer if no one else is, to represent our network. And I'll just remind the group, at the end of October, Rory and Kim did give a presentation to the City of Moorhead. I'm sure you remember, Deb. But part of that was kind of an agreement to figure out how we could work forward and if there are specific policy blueprints that could be taken up by the city. So I would see having a representative of our group connected with that process could be a helpful step in that direction as well. Any other thoughts on how we could integrate our work into comprehensive planning efforts, but also, you know, other relevant committees, boards, strategic planning processes that are happening? Any other thoughts on that?
Well, I think that our schools have shown so much change in the last few months, in really how they address delivering meals to the communities and their flexibility and all of that. So I think right now is probably not a great time, because I think they're in survival mode to make sure they can get kids in the classroom or in a different medium, whatever that is. But I certainly feel like continuing to have dialogues with schools is important, because I know we've talked about having neighborhood gardens on some of their properties. I know we've talked about food waste and how we can do better with the food that isn't being utilized at lunchtime. So I think we continue to need to have those vital discussions. I just don't want to add one other layer to what they're already trying to juggle currently.
Yes, great point. We used to have a food service director, that actually a couple of different ones, I think, that have been on our commission. I agree that could be a tough ask right now, but they are a very essential partner in all of this.
I would also like to give a shout out to Adam at MetroCog. One of the nice things about having MetroCog involved in this work is that oftentimes they head up some of these planning efforts. And for example, Cass County, when they did their comprehensive plan, Adam was instrumental in, number one, getting a committee member on the group, and then number two, to help get food systems work in the plan, as well as the flood diversion. The recreation plan there has some good food systems related ideas in there. So thank you, Adam, for your work too in doing some of this stuff.
Well, and I'll just add to that. I think we've seen a change in a lot of communities starting to address that with their comprehensive plans. I think Fargo was the first to sort of mention food as kind of under the guiding principle, looking at health impacts in the community. But Cass County really did a good job of putting together a number of implementation strategies for urban agriculture and pollinator habitats and other food systems issues. But we've also seen, we did a comprehensive plan update for Horace that talked about healthy food access and economic development. Dilworth, we had a recommendation in that looking at local food opportunities and supporting sustainability efforts. Even Castleton had a recommendation to support local and fresh food access opportunities. And if I'm not mistaken, Matt, you may know, I think even West Fargo's comp plan had a small, with one of the sub-area plans talking about community gardens. So all of these comprehensive plans that have come out now in the last 5, 6, 7 years have addressed food, local foods or food systems in some capacity. So it'll be exciting to see what Moorhead and Clay County come up with. And as you mentioned, I think recreation plans are another good area to look at when kind of thinking about some of these food systems issues. The FM diversion recreation plan looked at both incorporating community gardens and small scale farms as part of the project. And Moorhead did a river corridor study about 7 years. And I believe in that plan too, it addressed habitat enhancements. So again, looking at habitats that can support pollinators in the community. So I think that's another some good plans to look at, good opportunities to look at. I think Fargo is going to be starting up a river corridor study here either later this year or early next year. So that might be another opportunity.
I think the other point is, you know, I see Commissioner George and Commissioner Breitling, and there are folks on this board, and I think Arlette Preston too is on MetroCog, and we are on, so we advocate on that level, and there are those of us on the diversion committees, so we advocate for the plan there. So I think part of what I've always said about the greatness of MetroCog is that it really helps us collaborate together, and I think having all of us at this table, we can continue to advocate for what the needs that we hear in this committee are back to our own entities. But I know one thing that continues to be of importance is our planning and zoning departments, and I know that's comp plan things. But for instance, Clay County 3 years ago added a solar energy ordinance to our policy. It's not something that we ever had before, but we made sure and worked with Soil and Water and this board to have pollinator-friendly habitat go in underneath the solar panels. So I think, you know, I appreciate that you brought that up, but I think planning and zoning and the Soil and Water, I know Jeff's on here too, that's really important from both Cass and Clay County's perspective.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that, Jenny. That's how we became involved in the Fargo comp plan, was because of Nicole Crutchfield, and planning said health needs to be involved. So looking at the comprehensive plan from a health standpoint, looking at access to healthcare as well as active transportation, and then access to healthy food was how we kind of approached the Fargo plan a number of years ago. So your planning departments are great resources and great partners to have.
Well, this is all a really great discussion. We're very appreciative to the ideas and insights. You know, one takeaway for me is just thinking about the different stages that each jurisdiction is at, and whether it's getting language into a plan or maybe helping with thinking about what some of these aspirations can look like on the ground as we move forward. We are happy to help as the Casclave Food Partners, and I'm sure that we'll have many more conversations about this as it'll be our focus over the next year. So I don't have anything else to say on that, so I'll hand it back over to Commissioner Mojo.
Thank you. I have always said the hardest thing to learn about being an elected official is that it takes time and there's a process to make change happen. But this committee is doing the background work to help make those changes happen in a quicker manner than otherwise known. I mean, we've all seen pitches go to boards that weren't fully thought out, and they just get railroaded. So I think we're doing good background work to get some changes to happen. The next piece would be our public comment opportunity. This is the point in the meeting where anyone can say anything they'd like to pertinent to the business at hand. Is there anyone on this call that would like to say anything? Anybody else? Commissioner Breitling, this is the quietest I've ever heard you in a meeting. You've got to have something from Cass County.
I'm the rookie on board, so I'm listening and learning.
Wonderful. Anything else? Okay. The next item on the agenda would be our commission and steering committee roundtable. This is a time where we could go around and say anything. Did I do this wrong? Did I do this when I was supposed to do the check-in? Maybe.
No, you're good.
Okay.
Maybe
I guess
lots of opportunities for everyone to weigh in.
Yeah. Well, we want you to be able to speak. One item you may have noticed, Commissioner Cayley, our new commissioner from Clay County, is on the call. I have been overjoyed to take part in this committee over the last 6 years and have been one that have time to time said, what is the point of this? I don't understand this. So I've asked to be even more involved. And so I'm glad I asked that because it's really something I care about. But unfortunately, due to committee assignments, I have a conflict with this, and so I will happily serve the remainder of this year, and then Commissioner Cayley will take over in a year. So it's ripping the Band-Aid off over the course of a year, but that's probably why you heard she's my alternate on this, is we'll train her in. But. Anything else? I have a question. How are communities planning for food markets? Have we heard about that this summer? I know a lot of people are in the process of planning for those. Have you heard how cities are dealing with those? Nope. All right, well, if you hear from your cities what they're planning on, be sure to let us know. We can find a way to keep those going in a safe manner. Anything else on that piece?
Say, Jenny, I have a question. This is Mary Larson.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if any of the Clay County commissioners or anyone else knows how the survey, what the results were for the Johnson Park Garden and Orchard.
Yeah, that might be a question for Deb White, I think. That is, I believe, was a City of Moorhead questionnaire.
It was, and I think we were gathering the data and that we haven't had a report on it yet, but I'm excited about that. And going back to the farmer's market, I did want to say, I know that in the past we've had winter markets, occasional winter markets. We've hosted it at the Yemcomps, and I don't know. I did have a conversation with City Manager Molly. We're just looking at different outdoor activation things, and actually, this may be pertinent to Clay County as well, or some of the other counties. That West Central Initiative was looking for ways to provide some funding for some different outdoor activation events, and we even talked about, would it be possible to do some kind of a winter outdoor market, something that is more COVID safe. And so if any of you are in that region for West Central Minnesota, you may want to pursue that. I think that our city manager is doing it, but they said that they were just starting to explore that, of looking at how they could provide funding to support things like that.
That's a really good point. When the orchard surveys are complete, would you mind forwarding that to either Adam or Noel? And then maybe we could even have it on the agenda for a future meeting just to kind of review.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Great. Thank you very much. All right. Any other comments? If not, the next on the agenda is noting that the next first Friday will be February 5th. I believe that will continue to be in a virtual format as it has been in the past. That's an 8 o'clock meeting. And I had not attended those meetings just because of my schedule until they were offered in a virtual manner. And that is well worth your time. If you have the opportunity to tune into that, that is a in-depth conversation of a variety of different issues. One was a local cheesemaker and talked about how she gets the product to market and how local policies and ordinances either help that and how COVID has changed that. And one was talking about a gelato, a dairy farm from Carrington and all the pieces in that. And whether you're a foodie or a food a policy person in ordinances, I think that is a very worthwhile conversation. So if you have free hour on a Friday, grab a cup of coffee and tune in. That's really cool. They've got a great Food of the North Facebook page that you can follow through a lot of those conversations. And our next commission meeting is scheduled for March 10th from 10:30 to noon. I would assume that we will continue to be in a virtual format as long as that works with the rest of you. Does anyone have comments on that? I think we've done a really good job of continuing to have worthwhile conversation and dialogue and work even throughout the virtual piece. So as long as you're okay with that, we'll continue in that manner. Just an item of note, if you go to the Casclave Food Partners Facebook page, you'll see a ton of information if you're new to this board that we've covered over the last year, specifically when we've stepped up our addresses, that we've done some Facebook Lives. You can kind of get a better understanding of the work and scope of the food partners. So if you'd like to follow that, you can, and then share through your networks broadly. There was one question in the chat. Does anyone know how Meals on Wheels for seniors is doing? Perhaps a topic for another day.
I can add in a brief, very small, high-level update. I know that Aging Services with the state oversees Meals on Wheels and really helps moderate those programs, and that they have shifted to doing low or no contact deliveries. And Meals on Wheels is a program that does allow for a suggested donation in exchange for the meal that's being delivered. I think they have also had the ability to provide more meals at one time. So they're able to visit an individual's home less frequently, but provide more meals in that one stop. That's all I have for an update though.
And this isn't particularly Meals on Wheels, but it is the Lakes and Prairies Community Action Partnership. I know has really stepped up how they're doing those food meal deliveries, but I can reach out to them and get that for Jenna as well. She was the one that asked that question. Anything else? No? God, you guys are kind of quiet. All right, well, I guess if there's nothing else, feel free to reach out to anyone on this call if you've got more questions, and we will look forward to seeing you next time. So everyone be well, stay safe, and thanks.